right to organize unions. Yeah. For redress agreements. We're going to defend the right to assemble. Yeah. We know with Dr. King that the greatness of America is the right to protest for what is right against lawbreakers who take office. And that's where we are today. I'll leave you with my friends with the words of the great Marylander Frederick Douglass.
Jamie, why did you lose the popular vote? Why did you lose every single swing state? Why did you lose? Why did let me talk? Let me talk. Let me talk. It's not fake. Look at this. Look at this. Why'd you lose? Can I get my phone? No. Back up. Obviously, you saw what happened in this video. Jamie Raskin, the union members from the IAM just swarming me after he points at me in the crowd, and rather than engage in a discussion or he actually called for a protest in the video, and rather than respond to anything that I said, he points at me and his union, these individuals swarmed around me, and well, everyone could see what happened. I don't want to get ahead of the investigation here, but Evita, this is clearly an incitement to violence and a situation where, and I've listened to the video again and again, and I don't hear for a second that Congressman Raskin ever says to stop. He never calls for de-escalation. He never calls for the violence to end. What is going on here, Evita? What are we to make of this?
Well, let me just first say that I confirmed before the show, Jack, I'm so glad that Tanya wasn't there, that your kids weren't there. I mean, this is such a serious situation. It was so dangerous. But it seems like people are put in the situation all the time because the left is a violent movement at its core. There's a reason that Jamie did not call off these people who were attacking you. We saw this in 2020. American cities were torched. We had billions of dollars in damage, lives lost. Kamala Harris trying to bail out these criminals. Kyle Rittenhouse demonized and prosecuted for self-defense. This is the anarcho-tyranny, and that is so emblematic of the political left. Violence is the core of the movement. Collectivist revolutions always end in bloodshed because violence is not a flaw of the system. It is the engine that drives it. This is what they do. We even saw this more recently with the way they've been attacking Teslas. This fiery chaos is the strategy. And it doesn't matter if you are on the political right or the political left. Eventually this will come for you. If you look at what happened in the Soviet Union and the way that avid communists were eventually turned on each other, put themselves in the gulags. This is a movement that comes for everyone. No one is safe. And it's frankly terrifying, and you got a little glimpse of it yesterday as you were attacked. And I think that's what people should take away from this. This is just a flavor of what's going to come for everyone from collectivists.
Well, and look, you're right, and we've certainly spoken about this regarding Luigi Maggioni, regarding Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was an Act Blue donor. We've spoken, and instance after instance, as you mentioned, the Tesla situation and many of these cases where there is no chance for discussion, there's no attempt for discussion, even when you walk up and attempt to engage in discussion, the immediate response is overwhelming violence. And certainly when you bring up the loss of the popular vote in 2024, apparently that's something that just sends them into just an absolute blind rage. And it's a point where I think that the government and really just people in general have to understand that what we're dealing with here isn't a situation where these people are interested in sitting down and having a polite debate over the finer points of classical liberalism or something. Like, there is one side that has decided that they want to destroy the other. They're not interested in following the rules. And let's think about it, right? Jamie Raskin was the head of the Jan 6 committee. He threw peaceful protesters in jail. He threw Steve Bannon in jail. He threw Dr. Peter Navarro in jail, and they were happy about it. They cheered about it. Actually, by the way, Evita, you know who else was there? I didn't see him personally, but I saw later in the footage that Senator Chris Van Hollen, Jamie Raskin's Maryland colleague, was also there. And we saw Senator Chris Van Hollen was willing to go down to El Salvador to meet with an MS-13 member, a guy who is a wife beater and a guy who has had reports written against him that he was in a gang. He's got the tattoos, and the media wants to talk about the tattoos. Well, this is a guy, even beyond MS-13, he's an illegal alien. But when there's a U.S. citizen who's a public, in public, is a peaceful protester, Senator Chris Van Hollen, all that due process stuff, I guess it just flies out the window. But Evita, why is it? Why is it that they support the criminal over the law-abiding citizen?
That's such a good question, Jack. And you're right. Like this obsession with due process suddenly from the left is absolutely ridiculous and infuriating. I mean, you talked about January 6th, Jack. We had people put in solitary confinement, key evidence hidden from their lawyers. The left didn't care about due process at all. They were going to throw away the key on these people. They were literally politically targeting half the country and using January 6ers as a lesson, not in terms of it had nothing to do with law and order. It was just political targeting, brazen and disgusting. And there's a great quote from Gulag Archipelago that I want to read for you, Jack. It says, "For him to have a knife was mere misbehavior, tradition. He didn't know any better. But for you to have one was terrorism." And that's a great quote because it tells you exactly what the priorities of the left are. It's if the violence is going to be for a progressive cause, if we're going to attack Jack Posobiec, or if we're burning down cities for the summer of love, then it doesn't matter. Anything goes, any kind of violence. But now if it's bringing in illegal migrants into this country who are potential MS-13 gang members, well, then we really care about due process. Then due process really matters. There's no liberal democracy. There's no law and order or standards. It is all about whether it serves the purpose of progressivism. And if it does not serve the purpose of progressivism, then they have a very different response.
And that's what it comes down to again and again. It's almost it's unhuman. It's unhuman. They look at you, if you are not part of the revolution, as a sort of invasive species that must be eradicated. And so these things like due process or no one is above the law, these phrases, these tautologies that they throw out there, they never leave off unless you're a conservative, or unless you're a supporter of Donald Trump, or unless you're someone who is to the right of Pol Pot and Chairman Mao and all of the other leftist dictators, Joseph Stalin, et cetera, throughout history. If you're to the right of them, well, no, then you don't get these protections. These are for the good people. These are for the members of the revolution, or, of course, for the oppressed classes only. If you're a member of the oppressor class, well, then you must be taken down. And in fact, this is how you get through Marxism and neo-Marxism, particularly Bolshevist-Leninism. This is where you get the approval and, in fact, even encouragement, in many cases, of violence.